because now you have the casings for the gun, so you connect the gun. Now you got his DNA on it. That's huge. But I also want to get to another part.
I just got to interrupt. Sorry, I just got to interrupt. We have the DNA on the screwdriver that was found on the rooftop and the towel that the firearm was wrapped in. The firearm itself, this is a great point. Thanks for raising it.
Yeah, no problem.
That is being processed by ATF laboratories in Maryland, and I believe they'll speak to that at a later date when their process is incomplete. But I just want to let you know the FBI handled the screwdriver and the towel found on the scene.
That is important clarification, Mr. Director. I want to get to the 20 members in that group chat. Have they been brought in from questioning? And the group chat that from our reporting that we're hearing is from after the assassination. Do you have the messages from before the assassination?
Well, let me take a step back and tell you what we were doing while we were there and how we were led to the suspect.
Okay, so Kash Patel just got hit with a massive lawsuit, and this is absolutely explosive because 3 top FBI officials fired back in August 2025 are suing Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi, and they're alleging that their firings were pure political retribution. They're saying that Patel fired them because they worked on Trump investigations. They're saying that Patel fired them to remove people who were involved in the classified documents case and the Mar-a-Lago search. They're saying that Patel fired them to make Trump happy, and they've got a 68-page lawsuit with allegations that are absolutely damning. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
For comparative sake, the Boston bombing, the FBI didn't release images for 3 days. We know we didn't have 3 days. I made an executive decision on an investigative and operational need, and it turned out to be the right move because the men and women of the FBI said that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, we knew when that video was released, we said it here on Fox and Friends, someone's going to recognize this person because someone was friends with him, his family. Someone knows this guy. Those images were crystal clear. Tell us what you know about his background, his childhood, his father who had to turn him in.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore the last question. Going back to the group chats real quick, there's more than 20 individuals. But this is a great point. I want to lay out how this works. People think we can just get in these group chats and immediately find out who is in them. We, the FBI, are the investigatory body supporting multiple prosecutions and ongoing investigations. And that's another point. Our investigation at the FBI is ongoing. And there are scores of people in this Discord chat room. But we have to effectuate legal process. We have to go out there with search warrants so that if prosecutors want to later use this evidence.
Come on, this is wild. This is the kind of thing that shows you what's really happening inside the Trump administration. Because Patel supposedly told one of the fired agents that the FBI tried to put the president in jail and that he hasn't forgotten it. Trump hasn't forgotten it. So now people are being fired because of what they did during Trump investigations. People are losing their jobs because they were part of the team that investigated Trump. People are being purged from the FBI because they didn't protect Trump from the law. This is exactly the kind of thing that Trump opponents have been warning about. And here's the really crazy part. Patel supposedly admitted to one of the fired agents that he was firing them to save his own job. Patel said, "My job depends on removing Trump case agents. My job depends on getting rid of people who were involved in investigating Trump." That's an admission. That's Patel admitting that he's firing people for political reasons. That's Patel admitting that he's retaliating against people because of their role in Trump investigations. That's Patel admitting that the entire firing operation is based on political loyalty to Trump, not on merit or on any legitimate government purpose. And this is coming from the FBI director. This is the person who is supposed to be running the FBI independently. This is the person who is supposed to be insulated from political pressure. This is the person who made confirmation promises that he wouldn't fire people for political reasons. And now he's being sued for allegedly doing exactly that. This is a constitutional crisis. This is the weaponization of government that Trump opponents have been warning about since before he took office. The 3 FBI officials who are suing are Brian Driscoll, who was the acting director at some point, Stephen Jensen, and Spencer Evans. These are top officials. These are people who had significant roles in the FBI. These are people who were involved in major investigations. And they're all claiming that they were fired because of their work on Trump investigations. They're claiming that Patel fired them to protect Trump. They're claiming that Patel fired them to suppress investigations into Trump. They're claiming that Patel's entire motivation was political loyalty to Trump, not the interests of the FBI or the country. and the lawsuit is 68 pages long. The lawsuit is detailed. The lawsuit has specific allegations about what Patel said and did. The lawsuit has quotes from Patel admitting that his motivation was political. The lawsuit has facts and dates and specifics. This is not some vague complaint. This is a serious legal document that makes serious allegations about political retribution and abuse of power. And the targets of the firings tell you everything you need to know, because the people who were fired were agents and officials who worked on the classified documents case. They were people who worked on the Mar-a-Lago search. They were people who were involved in investigating Trump. So Patel fired them not because they were bad at their jobs. Patel fired them because of what they investigated. Patel fired them because they were part of the team that went after Trump. This is pure political retribution. This is using government power to punish political enemies. This is exactly what Trump opponents have been warning about. And this is happening in the middle of all the other chaos in Washington. This is happening during a government shutdown. This is happening during an impeachment crisis. This is happening during all the other political chaos and dysfunction. And now you've got this explosive lawsuit that alleges that the FBI director is firing people for political reasons. This is going to dominate the news cycle. This is going to become a massive political issue. This is going to fuel Democratic attacks on Trump for weaponizing government. Because here's the thing. When you fire people because of their political views or because of investigations they worked on, that's a violation of their constitutional rights. That's a violation of civil service protections. That's abuse of power. And if Patel actually did this, if Patel actually fired people for political reasons, then Patel should be removed. The attorney general should be removed. Trump should face consequences. This is serious stuff. This is the kind of thing that destroys democracies. This is the kind of thing that turns governments into authoritarian regimes. And the Republicans are going to have a really hard time defending this. Because how do you defend firing people for political reasons? How do you defend using government power to punish people who investigated Trump? How do you defend the FBI director admitting that he fired people to save his own job? You can't defend it. It's indefensible. So Republicans are probably going to try to ignore it or attack the people filing the lawsuit. But the lawsuit is going to move forward. The lawsuit is going to expose what happened. And this is going to be a nightmare for Trump and for Republicans heading into 2026. All right, so let's talk about what's actually going on with this lawsuit and what it means, because there's a lot of really important stuff here. And most people don't understand the significance of what Patel allegedly did. Most people don't understand the constitutional implications of firing FBI officials for political reasons. Most people don't understand how serious this is. So let's break this down and explain what's really happening. So first, let's talk about who Kash Patel is and what his role is. Patel is the FBI director. He was appointed by Trump. Before he became FBI director, Patel was involved in various roles in the Trump administration. Patel was known as a Trump loyalist. Patel was known as someone who would defend Trump no matter what. And Trump appointed him FBI director, presumably because Trump trusted him to run the FBI in a way that was favorable to Trump. Now, the FBI director is supposed to be independent. The FBI is supposed to be independent from political pressure. The FBI is supposed to investigate crimes based on the evidence and the law, not based on whether the person being investigated is the president or not. That's a fundamental principle of American democracy. The law applies equally to everyone. No one is above the law, and the FBI is supposed to enforce the law impartially. But when Trump appointed Patel as FBI director, there were concerns that Patel would not be independent. There were concerns that Patel would use the FBI to protect Trump. There were concerns that Patel would fire people who had investigated Trump or who had not been sufficiently loyal to Trump. And now those concerns seem to have been validated because the lawsuit alleges that Patel did exactly that. The lawsuit alleges that Patel fired people because they worked on Trump investigations. So let's look at what the lawsuit specifically alleges. The lawsuit says that Patel told one of the fire agents, Brian Driscoll, that the FBI tried to put the president in jail. Patel supposedly said that Trump hasn't forgotten it. And then Patel supposedly fired Driscoll because of his role in Trump investigations. So Patel was basically saying the FBI investigated Trump. Trump hasn't forgotten that. So I'm going to fire the people who were involved in that investigation. And then Patel supposedly admitted to one of the fired agents that his job depended on removing Trump case agents. Patel supposedly said, "My job depends on getting rid of people who worked on the Trump case. My job depends on firing people who investigated Trump." So Patel was basically admitting that his entire motivation for the firings was to make Trump happy. Patel was admitting that he was firing people to protect Trump. Patel was admitting that the firings were political retribution. Now, this is huge, because if Patel actually said these things, if Patel actually admitted that he was firing people for political reasons, then Patel has committed a serious crime. Firing someone based on their political beliefs or their political activities is illegal. It violates civil service protections. It violates federal law. It could constitute abuse of power. And if Patel admits that he did it, then Patel is admitting to a crime. And the people who were fired, Driscoll, Jensen, Evans, they're saying that they were fired because of their role in Trump investigations. They're saying that they were part of the team that investigated Trump. They're saying that they worked on the classified documents case. They're saying that they worked on the Mar-a-Lago search investigation. They're saying that they were purged from the FBI because Trump wanted them gone. Now, the question is, were these people actually involved in investigating Trump, or were they just fired for other reasons? Well, based on the lawsuit, they were involved. Driscoll had some role in Trump investigations. Jensen had some role. Evans had some role. So Patel was firing people who had worked on Trump investigations. And Patel was supposedly doing it because Trump wanted them gone. And Patel was supposedly admitting that his motivation was political. This is weaponization of government. This is using government power to punish political enemies. This is using government power to protect the president from accountability. This is exactly what Trump opponents have been warning about. This is exactly the kind of thing that happens in authoritarian regimes. This is the kind of thing that destroys democratic norms. And the timing of the firings is also suspicious. The firings happened in August 2025. That was right after Trump was dealing with the classified documents investigation. That was right after Jack Smith was investigating Trump. That was right after the whole classified documents situation was heating up. So Patel fired people who were involved in that investigation right when the investigation was still active, right when the investigation was still going on. Now the question is, why would Patel fire people in the middle of an active investigation? Why would Patel want to fire people who were working on the case? Well, according to the lawsuit, Patel wanted to remove people who were pursuing Trump. Patel wanted to remove obstacles to Trump. Patel wanted to make sure that the investigation couldn't succeed because the people running it had been fired. This is obstruction of justice. This is interfering with an investigation. This is using government power to protect the president from accountability. This is serious criminal conduct. And if the lawsuit allegations are true, then Patel is guilty of serious crimes. And Trump is guilty of serious crimes because he presumably ordered the firings. And here's the thing about the FBI. The FBI is one of the most important institutions in American government. The FBI investigates federal crimes. The FBI investigates corruption. The FBI investigates abuse of power. And if the FBI director is being used to protect the president from accountability, then the entire FBI loses its independence. The entire FBI becomes corrupted. The entire system of checks and balances collapses. And that's what the lawsuit is really about. The lawsuit is about whether the FBI will remain independent or whether it will become a tool of presidential power. The lawsuit is about whether the rule of law still matters or whether the president is above the law. The lawsuit is about fundamental constitutional questions, about the separation of powers and the independence of law enforcement. And the lawsuit also raises questions about Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, because Bondi is supposedly complicit in these firings. Bondi is being sued along with Patel. Bondi is presumably approving these firings, or at least not stopping them. So Bondi is also responsible for politicizing the Justice Department. Bondi is also responsible for using government power for political purposes. And this is a really big deal because the Justice Department is supposed to be independent. The Attorney General is supposed to be impartial. The Attorney General is not supposed to fire people because they investigated the president. The Attorney General is not supposed to use the Justice Department to protect the president. That's a fundamental principle of American democracy. But according to the lawsuit, that's exactly what's happening. The Attorney General is approving the firing of FBI officials who investigated Trump. The Attorney General is complicit in the weaponization of government. The Attorney General is part of the conspiracy to protect Trump from accountability. And that's a constitutional crisis. That's a serious problem. That's the kind of thing that could bring down the government or at least seriously damage it. Okay, so let's break down what this lawsuit actually means for Trump, for Patel, for Bondi, and for the broader question of whether the FBI will remain independent or whether it will become a tool of presidential power. Because there are really 5 key things that matter here. And if you understand these 5 things, you understand the entire significance of this lawsuit. First, this is direct evidence of weaponization of government. The lawsuit has quotes from Patel, allegedly admitting that he fired people because of their role in Trump investigations. The lawsuit has Patel supposedly saying that Trump hasn't forgotten that the FBI tried to investigate him. The lawsuit has Patel supposedly admitting that his job depends on firing Trump case agents. These are not vague allegations. These are specific quotes. These are direct evidence that the government is being weaponized to protect Trump. This is exactly what Democrats have been accusing Trump of doing, and now they have a lawsuit that allegedly proves it. Second, this exposes the abuse of FBI director power. The FBI director is supposed to be independent. The FBI director is not supposed to fire people for political reasons. The FBI director is not supposed to take orders from the president about who to fire. And if Patel is firing people because Trump wants them gone, then Patel is abusing his power. Patel is violating the independence of the FBI. Patel is turning the FBI into a political tool, and that's a massive problem. That's a constitutional violation. That's the kind of thing that should result in Patel being removed from office. Third, this undermines the entire Justice Department. If the FBI director is firing people for political reasons, then what about the prosecutors? What about the Justice Department officials? Are they also being fired for political reasons? Are they also being pressured to protect Trump? Is the entire Justice Department being turned into a tool of presidential power? This lawsuit raises questions about the entire structure of the Justice Department. This lawsuit raises questions about whether justice is being administered fairly or whether it's being corrupted by political considerations. Fourth, this is going to fuel massive Democratic attacks on Trump. Democrats are going to use this lawsuit in every campaign ad in 2026. Democrats are going to say, look, Trump is weaponizing government. Look, Trump is firing FBI officials to protect himself. Look, Trump is using the Justice Department to cover up his crimes. This is going to be devastating for Republicans. This is going to flip suburban voters. This is going to flip independent voters. This is the kind of attack that wins elections. Fifth, this is going to strengthen the case for impeaching Trump or removing him from office. Because if the president is weaponizing the FBI to protect himself, if the president is firing officials to cover up investigations, that's an impeachable offense. That's abuse of power. That's obstruction of justice. And Congress could use this lawsuit as evidence for impeachment. Congress could use this lawsuit to build a case for removing Trump from office. And even if Congress doesn't impeach, this lawsuit is going to make it harder for Trump to govern. This lawsuit is going to undermine Trump's authority. This lawsuit is going to weaken Trump's political position. What's really happening here is that this lawsuit is exposing the corruption at the highest levels of government. This lawsuit is showing that the president is using government power to protect himself from accountability. This lawsuit is showing that the FBI director is complicit in this scheme. This lawsuit is showing that the Justice Department is complicit in this scheme. This lawsuit is showing that the entire system is corrupt, and that's a constitutional crisis. That's the kind of thing that destroys democracies. That's the kind of thing that countries go through coups over. That's the kind of thing that leads to civil unrest and political instability. Because if the law doesn't apply equally to everyone, if the president is above the law, if the government is used to protect the president rather than to serve the people, then democracy doesn't work. The entire system collapses. And this lawsuit is going to force a confrontation with these issues. The lawsuit is going to force the courts to decide whether the FBI director can fire people for political reasons. The lawsuit is going to force the courts to decide whether the FBI director can use government power to protect himself from accountability. The lawsuit is going to force a showdown between the executive branch and the courts. And this is going to be the defining issue of Trump's second term. Because House Republicans are going to have to decide whether to defend Patel or whether to acknowledge that something is wrong. House Republicans are going to have to decide whether loyalty to Trump is more important than the rule of law. House Republicans are going to have to decide whether they care about the Constitution or whether they only care about partisan politics. And however they decide is going to affect them in 2026. Because voters care about this stuff. Voters care about whether the government is being used fairly or whether it's being weaponized. Voters care about whether the law applies equally to everyone or whether the president is above the law. And this lawsuit is going to force voters to confront these questions. This lawsuit is going to make voters think about whether Trump should be allowed to stay in office or whether he should be removed. So the stakes here are incredibly high. This lawsuit is not just about whether 3 FBI officials get their jobs back. This lawsuit is about whether the FBI will remain independent. This lawsuit is about whether the Justice Department will remain independent. This lawsuit is about whether the rule of law still matters. This lawsuit is about whether the rule of law still matters or whether it's becoming an authoritarian regime. And that's why this lawsuit is so important. That's why it's going to dominate the political conversation for months. That's why it's going to be a huge issue in 2026. This lawsuit is exposing corruption at the highest levels of government. This lawsuit is exposing the weaponization of the FBI and the Justice Department. This lawsuit is forcing a confrontation with fundamental constitutional questions. So buckle up because this lawsuit is going to be absolutely huge. This lawsuit is going to expose the corruption in the Trump administration. This lawsuit is going to fuel Democratic attacks on Trump. This lawsuit is going to strengthen the case for impeaching Trump or removing him from office. This lawsuit is going to define Trump's second term. And if you want to know how this lawsuit develops and what impact it has on 2026, make sure you're subscribed because we're going to have complete coverage of every development in this case. This is only the beginning of what's going to be a really significant legal and political battle over the independence of the FBI and the future of democracy in America.